kind of surprised that there aren't more ladders in this underground kingdom. Wouldn't they be faster to go up? But I guess ladders are never a permanent thing, right? I was pondering if we had like an elevator or something that goes up. The developer had commented about the sort of era that the game world exists in, and it was never really in their thoughts when they were creating the game of what sort of era it is. But when they were asked about it, they speculated somewhere around medieval, when people really believed in fairy tales. What I mean by that is, I know early explorers, when they were coming out of Europe, they mapped the world based on stories that people would bring in from wherever they've traveled from. And they would share stories of giants who don't have any heads but have faces in their bodies and all these other fantastical stories. And in some ways, I think it was just the traders protecting their trade. Because if people were scared of the territory, then they'll never go there. That means they now have a job security that if nobody is going to walk these roads but me, then it's just safe for me. Cool. No competition. They're always going to buy my goods. And I think that's just what happened. And so these early Europeans, they had maps drawn up of the world of these really fantastical creatures and places and monsters that when they finally began to explore, when they reached a village, they would ask, well, where are the monsters? How much further until, like, the creatures and monsters? What do we need to beware of? And it always became further and further away, all these mystical, frightening things. But that period, when they didn't explore, when all those frightening, horrific things existed, I think that's the perfect time, the perfect era for when this is really happening. In some ways, it's like that belief of the world being that way has made it real, and those people certainly believed it. And all those people believing in this sort of fantastical thing, in some ways it did make it real, with their stories and the tales that they shared with each other. I think that's why, when it comes to fantasy, people like that medieval area, or medieval, not area, but era. Well, I guess you could say it's an area as well. I think, though, like, this is why certain movie studios are still successful with animations and things that draw us in, that fantasy. There's just something to it that we want to be real. So today we're just taking a walk to another place I really like. We were in the library, we were in the waterfall. I know we were here less than a week ago. We were up here when we left the secret door. To me, it's not it was less than a week ago we were here. It's more of, we haven't been there in quite a few days. I'm gonna go see it again. Me and my best friend, we used to go on walks a lot together. It was just a place we were both living at the time. And we would just get into the weirdest conversations walking. I think uh, just being in that similar setting with the shade, just on a walk. These are the places my mind goes. I know reading Zarathustra, he mentioned something about fantasy, and that when you devote too much of yourself to it, when that becomes the driving force in your life, you're creating a world that doesn't exist. And it's fun. Absolutely, it's fun. And it's worth spending some time in, but it should be used. I don't know. How can we put this? We can't make it a stupid parable that's like, you just shouldn't do this, because nobody listens to that kind of stuff. I guess in some ways you're developing a muscle that doesn't exist, right? You're working out something that is not tangible. And as great as wonderful as it is, and how much fun people have to visit those places, that it can become unhealthy just because we neglect our own bodies. I think it's weird, the concept of you are a passenger in your own body. You see that? Friend? Barry? What's wrong with our friend? He's just sleeping, right? My only friend. You have left me. I'll remember you forever. The Shade's eyes. He was so sad. Yes, of course. I knew this was here. And when I wanted to travel here a few days ago, I was thinking it was around time. When I go back through and look at some pictures, because I consider, where are we going to walk on the next stream? I looked at some of the timings of when this happened, and I knew that it was time. So I wanted to come here. I do like this place. Absolutely enjoy this place. But it was also because I wanted to share the spider. In some ways, I feel like it's a big driving force for our Shade. To lose his only friend in this place, in these caverns, this place where there isn't anybody, and the only small existence that is there, when they're gone, how suddenly how small and empty everything feels. So you may recall, when we've come here before, carrying a mushroom, the shade would say, the mushroom is too much, because of our spider friend. It would be too heavy and wreck the web, but our spider friend is no longer in the web. So this is something we were never able to do before. Carry a glowing mushroom with us through these parts of the caves. I know immediately you may consider, oh, we can just take it here. Can we take it home? Can we grow them at home? Can we do this? What can we do with it? There is a bit we can do, and we're going to walk around and explore some of the things we can do. One thing we cannot do is to bring it home. And this is something we shared several weeks ago. We grabbed a mushroom, we took it from our home, and we walked with that mushroom as high as we could. Eventually, we reached a doorway, and eat mushroom, the thing that it says there from having the mushroom in our hand, that takes priority over entering a door. So the doorways are literally mushrooms you will not pass, barriers. You might be wondering, what's this? What's that over there? We visited this place before. This was where we got one of our first crystals. There was a large crystal growing there, and we picked it off and we took it home. On the Reddit that I visit on occasion, somebody posted a picture of this place, and they say, how come I can't interact with that? What is that? And it had been so long since they took the crystals, they'd forgotten. It goes to show, though, how much just walking around a lot of people don't do. They've just seen the places once. So briefly that when they've come back again, they've forgotten that they've been here before. But it looks so different. These very, very gray walls with this sort of purple glow. This cool looking mouth of a cavern. Let's feed the cavern. Let's plant a mushroom here. We can't. Otherwise it would say, plant a mushroom, or grow a mushroom. Something along those lines. We can't do it. But we're keeping an eye out for that. This is where we met our spider bro. I wonder, I've never started a game and just left it alone. I wonder if I did do that and the game reached 400 days, if you come up here, what would it be like? Would the spider still be in its original web? Certain places that I think are time-gated in the way, such as the stalactite and the moss, I feel like they don't begin to grow until you've arrived on location. Is that true, though? I think the only way to test it is to start a game and just let it sit. I probably would have done that if I had thought about it some close to a month ago when we started playing, but I don't have a profile to do that with. You only get 8 profiles on the Switch, and they're all filled up. Five of my profiles are on the 5 different endings. One of them is up on the surface, walking around. One of them is in the halls of eternity, walking around eternally. And the last one is the one we're playing now. You can start the game again if you remain at one of the ending screens long enough. You have the options to start a new game. I think that's so cool, how he just keeps it in his mouth. Grow mushroom. We're gonna grow a mushroom. It's slowly regrowing here. We don't want the mushroom to be lonely, so we're gonna go find him a friend. I wonder, now that we know about bone meal, I wonder if that was a concept that was considered at some point for growing mushrooms, perhaps. But instead, we have 2 different mushrooms. And we can make some mutants out of that. To me, that's fun information. Some of the thought process when a game is being developed, something you consider, and then it's changed over time, but it's still in the game, but perhaps not as the original idea that you had for it. Interesting. There are three different mushrooms in the game. There's the light ones, the ones that create light, the lanterns, the green ones, which make the shade kind of green-faced when he tries to eat them, and then there's the ones at home. They're just like the purple ones up here. Some people actually call them pink. It could just be the color settings on the Switch. But those are different. They don't cast light. But this being such a late game discovery, the feeling that I wanted to walk around everywhere again with mushrooms, just to see what I can do with them. It felt like I missed the spider, because the spider's our friend, and he's gone. But from that, there were so many new discoveries that we could make. And I wanted to discover, I wanted to wander around, explore everywhere else. I think, so now I want to have some time for reading. I was thinking to come back up here, grab another mushroom, and we would walk down as far as we could, just to show that there is a limit. We did walk around a bit, and you did say that, for the most part, there wasn't really any place to... Probably taste disgusting. There wasn't any place else to plant any mushrooms. Oh yeah, these green ones, we can as well. We can take them with us up towards the surface. But as we've already seen with the purple ones, there's no place to plant them. We would only be carrying them to have for a snack for later. Notice that we can't jump up or attempt to jump up the cliff anymore. But we've done this before. We know what this means. We're making big springy mushrooms we can jump on. So we have that to look forward to. Down this way is another dead end, and where we found our single piece of lapis. There's no place to plant mushrooms there. Even if we could, there's no place else for us to reach. This is the corner where the secret door led us off. And we can see up there, it's just a dead corner. A dead corner? Well, it's just a corner. And carrying a mushroom here, there's unfortunately no option to plant. I think the mushrooms would get in the way of the door itself. Well, we will be revisiting this place again after our mushrooms have grown. I'll make it a point then to bring a mushroom with us further down, just to see how everything lights up and how it looks. But this would be our limit. This is as far as we could go with the mushroom. We could go explore the mines with the mushroom, but we wouldn't be able to pass the doorway. Yeah, each little doorway has a tiny Gandalf that smites every mushroom, telling it, "It shall not pass." It's an amazing feeling, though, when you've played this game for so long up to this point, and then that thing where the spider happens, and it does hurt just to see how sad the shade is. But then if you discover you can carry a mushroom past the web, like, how much possibility that reopened in my mind. It was such an amazing feeling. I was ready to walk with the mushroom everywhere, walk all the places. I just imagined building giant mushrooms just anywhere I can think of, just to decorate, just to see where could I bounce to. What about the top of those stairs where it's a dead end? Could I put them in this place? What would they do in this place? How would they react in water? Could I plant them way down where the crystals are? Maybe I could touch a ceiling from that location. Maybe that's how you get up to that little stairway where the moss is. Just my mind pictured so many possibilities. And I had wished for a while, I had planted more mushrooms, so that way I had more purple ones and more green ones, because I was going to have to wait for them to regrow. So that way I had more places I can plant mushrooms, more mushrooms to plant. Stumbling over my words. Wow. You get what I mean. I felt like I could have been more prepared. Now I'm going to have to wait days to have enough mushrooms to plant them everywhere. But then, shortly after having all these thoughts on the long journey that it takes to carry a mushroom down into the mines, and then reaching the doorway, then reaching that disappointment that you can't cross the doorway with the mushroom. But all wasn't lost. We did find one place to plant mushrooms. So we do have that satisfaction. With how fast time moves, we could come back tomorrow. Not in-game tomorrow, but the next time we stream tomorrow, we can come back and visit that mushroom. And by then it should be done. You may not have seen it on stream, but the last time we were at that wall and I had thought I had planted the mushrooms correctly, I made a mistake, and they didn't grow. So I spent some time AFK there, and just watched them. I created a time lapse to watch the mushrooms grow. If you were to go onto YouTube and look for that particular video, there is a time lapse of hanging out with the mushrooms, just to make sure they grew correctly. It's not a perfect time lapse, but it does well enough. And it did give me a sense of how long it takes for one of those mushrooms to grow. So I can say with some certainty that by tomorrow, after another 20 or so days have passed, oh yeah, that mushroom will be well in full bloom, provided we planted it correctly. But another 20-something days will be beyond the 200 to 300 days mark. We'll be at the final 100 days. A book. Reading a book. Thus sang Zarathustra. I like how this Zarathustra character is evolving. Chapter 51. Sorry. On passing by. Thus, slowly wandering, though many peoples in divers cities did. Through. Thus, slowly wandering through many peoples and divers cities, did Zarathustra return by roundabout roads to his mountain and his cave. And behold, thereby came he unawares also to the gate of the great city. Here, however, a foaming fool, with extended hands, sprang forward to him and stood in his way. It was the same fool whom the people called the ape of Zarathustra, for he had learned from him something of the expression and modulation of language, and perhaps liked also to borrow from the store of his wisdom. And the fool talked thus to Zarathustra. O Zarathustra, here is the great city. Here hast thou nothing to seek and everything to lose. Why wouldst thou wade through this mire? Have pity upon thy foot. Spit rather on the gate of the city, and turn back. Here is the hell for anchorites' thoughts. Here are the great thoughts seethed, lived, and boiled small. Here do all great sentiments decay. Here may only rattle-boned sensations rattle. Smellest thou not already the shambles and cookshops of the spirit? Steameth not this city with the fumes of slaughtered spirit? Seest thou not the souls hanging like limp dirty rags? And they make newspapers also out of these rags. Hearest thou not? The spirit hath here become a verbal game. Loathsome verbal swill doth it vomit forth, and they make newspapers also out of this verbal swill. They hound one another, and know not whither. They inflame one another, and know not why. They tinkle with their pinchbeck, they jingle with their gold. They are cold, and seek warmth from distilled waters. They are inflamed, and seek coolness from frozen spirits. They are all sick and sore through public opinion. All lusts and vices are here at home. But here there are also the virtuous, and there is much appointed virtue. Much appointable virtue with scribe fingers and hardy sitting flesh and waiting flesh, blessed with small breath stars and padded haunchless daughters. There is here also much piety and much faithful spittle licking and spittle backing before the God of hosts. From on high drippeth the star and the gracious spittle, for the high longeth every starless bosom. The moon hath its court, and the court hath its moon calves. Unto all, however, what cometh from the court do the mendicant people pray, and all appointable mendicant virtues. I serve, thou servest, we serve. So prayeth all appointable virtue to the prince, that the merited star may at last stick in the slender breast. But the moon still revolveth all around that is earthly. So revolveth also the prince around what is earthliest of all. That, however, is the gold of the shopman. The god of the hosts of war is not the god of the golden bar. The prince prospereth, but the shopman disposeth. With all that is luminous and strong, and good in thee, O Zarathustra, spit on the city of shopman, and return back. Here floweth all blood putridly, and tepidly, and frothily. Through all veins, spit on the great city, which is the great slum, where all the scum frotheth together. Spit on the city of compressed souls and slender breasts, of pointed eyes and sticky fingers. On the city of the obtrusive, the brazen-faced, the pen demagogues and tongue demagogues, the overheated, ambitious, where everything maimed, ill-famed, lustful, untrustful, over-mellow, sickly yellow and seditious, festereth, pernicious, spit on the great city and turn back. Here, however, did Zarathustra interrupt the foaming fool and shut his mouth. Stop this at once, called out Zarathustra. Long have thy speech and thy species disgusted me. Why did thou live so long by the swamp, that thou thyself hadst to become a frog and a toad? Floweth there not a tainted, frothy swamp blood in thine own veins, when thou hast thus learned to croak and revile? Why wentest thou not into the forest, or why didst thou not till the ground? Is not the sea full of green islands? I despise thy contempt, and when thou warnest me, didst thou not warn thyself? Out of love alone shall my contempt and my warning bird take wing, but not out of the swamp. We call thee mine ape, thou foaming fool, but I call thee my grunting pig. By thy grunting thou spoilest even my praise of folly. What was it that first made thee grunt? Because no one sufficiently flattered thee? Therefore didst thou seat thyself beside this filth, that thou mightest have cause for much grunting, that thou mightest have cause for much vengeance. For vengeance, thou vain fool, is all thy foaming, and have divined thee well. I have divined thee well. But thy fool's worth injureth me, even when thou art right, and even if Zarathustra's word were 100 times justified, thou wouldst ever do wrong with my word. Thus spake Zarathustra. Then did he look on the great city inside, and was long silent. At last he spake thus. I loathe also this great city, not only this fool, here and there. There is nothing to better, nothing to worsen. Woe to this great city, and I would that I already saw the pillar of fire, in which it will be consumed. Such pillars of fire must precede the great noontide, but this hath its time and its own fate. This precept, however, give I unto thee, imparting, thou fool, where one can go where one can no longer love, there should one pass by. Thus spake Zarathustra, and passed by the fool in the great city. In some ways, it sounded like Zarathustra was speaking to himself, because the way he portrays himself, speaking out against these people and just like saying how he just wants these people to burn and how he can't wait to do so. It's almost like this fool guy, he's got it right. And Zarathustra is saying, no, you fool, like, why did you waste yourself just standing here outside the city gates, mocking the city, when you could have spent that time instead to build a life for yourself elsewhere? I suppose that is what Zarathustra did, and that's what he's trying to define as what makes him set apart and different, where he lives up in a mountain where he doesn't enjoy himself and he's not freezing cold. He makes the image that he's freezing cold, but I think it's to keep other people away. It's kind of like that story we were sharing about the traders, telling fantastical stories of scary monsters and such, just to keep other people away. 52. The apostates. Lieth everything already withered and grey, which but lately stood green and many-hued on this meadow. And how much honey of hope did I carry hence to my beehives? Those young hearts have already all become old. Not old even, only weary, ordinary, comfortable, they declare it. We have again become pious. Of late did I see them run forth at early morn with valorous steps, but the feet of their knowledge became weary, and now do they malign even their morning valor. Verily, many of them once lifted their legs like the dancer. To them winked the laughter of my wisdom. Then did they bethink themselves, just now have I seen them bent down to creep to the cross. Around light and liberty did they once flutter like gnats and young poets, a little older, a little colder, and already they mystifiers and mumblers and mollycoddles. Okay. Did perhaps their hearts despond because lonesomeness had swallowed me like a whale? Did their ear perhaps hearken yearningly long for me in vain, and for my trumpet notes and herald calls? Ever are there but few of those whose hearts have persistent courage and exuberance, and then in such remaineth also the spirits patient. The rest, however, are cowardly. The rest. These are also always the great majority, the commonplace, the superfluous, the far too many. Those all are cowardly. I'm going to pause here for a moment. I'll be right back. I'm just stumbling over my words. All right. Reset. The rest. These are always the great majority, the commonplace, the superfluous, far too many. Those all are cowardly. Him who is of my type will also the experiences of my type meet on the way, so that his first companions must be corpses and buffoons. His second companions, however, they will call themselves his believers, will be a living host, with much love, much folly, much unbearded veneration. To those believers shall he, who is of my type among men, not bind his heart. In those springtimes, in many-hued meadows, shall he not believe, who knoweth the thickly faint-hearted human species. Could they do otherwise, then would they also will otherwise. The half and half spoil every whole. That leaves become withered. What is there to lament about that? Let them go and fall away, O Zarathustra, and do not lament. Better even to blow amongst them with rustling winds. Blow amongst those leaves, O Zarathustra, that everything withered may run away from thee the faster. We have again become pious. So do those apostates confess, and some of them are still too pusillanimous thus to confess. Unto them I look into the eye. Before them I say it unto their face, and unto the blush of their cheeks. Ye are those who again pray. It is, however, a shame to pray, not for all, but for thee, and me, and whoever hath his conscience in his head. For thee it is a shame to pray. Thou knowest it well, the faint-hearted devil in thee, which would fain fold its arms, and place its hand in its bosom, and take it easier. This faint-hearted devil persuadeth thee that there is a God. Thereby, however, dost thou belong to the light-dreading type, to whom light never permitteth repose. Now must thou daily thrust thy head deeper into obscurity and vapor, and verily thou choosest the hour well. For just now do the nocturnal birds again fly abroad. The hour hath come for all light-dreading people, the vesper hour, and leisure hour, when they do not take leisure. I hear it and smell it. It hath come, their hour for hunt and procession, not indeed for a wild hunt, but for a tame, lame, snuffling, soft treaders, soft prayers hunt. For a hunt after susceptible simpletons, all mousetraps for the heart have again been set, and whenever I lift a curtain, the night moth rusheth out of it. Did it perhaps squat there, along with another night moth? For everywhere do I smell small concealed communities, and wherever there are closets, there are new devotees therein, and the atmosphere of devotees. They sit for long evenings beside one another and say, let us again become like little children, and say, good God, ruined in mouths and stomach by the pious confectioners. Or they look for long evenings at a crafty, lurking cross-spider that preacheth prudence to the spiders themselves, and teacheth that under crosses it is good for cobweb spinning. Or they sit all day at swamps with angle rods, and on that account think themselves profound. But whoever fisheth there are no fish. I do not even call him superficial. Or they learn, in godly gay style, to play the harp with a hymn poet, who would fain harp himself into the heart of young girls, for he hath tired of old girls and their praises. Or they learn to shudder with a learned semi-madcap, who waiteth in darkened rooms for spirits to come to him, and the spirit runneth away entirely. Or they listen to an old roving howl and growl piper, who hath learnt from the sad winds the sadness of sounds. Now pipeth he as the wind, and preacheth sadness in sad strains. And some of them have even become night watchmen. They know now how to blow horns, and go about at night and awaken old things, which have long fallen asleep. 5 words about old things did I hear yesternight on the garden wall. They came from such old, sorrowful, arid night watchmen. For a father, he careth not sufficiently for his children. Human fathers do this better. He is too old. He now careth no more for his children, answered the other night watchman. Hath he then children? No one can prove it, unless he himself prove it. I've long wished that he would for once prove it thoroughly. Prove? As if he ever proved anything. Proving is difficult to him. He layeth great stress on one's believing him. Aye, belief saveth him, belief in him. That is the way with old people, so it is with us also. Thus spake to each other the two old night watchmen and light scarers, and tooted thereupon sorrowfully their horns. So did they happen yesternight at the garden wall. To me, however, did the heart writhe with laughter, and was like to break, and knew not where to go, and sunk into the midriff. Verily, it will be my death yet, to choke with laughter when I see asses drunken, and hear night watchmen bust out about God. At the time not long, since past for all such doubts, who may nowadays awaken such old slumbering, light-shunning things? With the old deities hath it long since come to an end, and verily, a good joyful deity end had they. They did not begloom themselves to death. That do people fabricate. On the contrary, they laughed themselves to death once on a time. That took place when the ungodliest utterance came from a god himself. The utterance, there is but one God. Thou shalt have no other gods before me. An old grim beard of a god, a jealous one, forgot himself in such wise. And all the gods then laughed, and shook upon their thrones, and exclaimed, Is it not just divinity that... Whoa. That story goes suddenly canceled? Alright. Shook upon their thrones and exclaimed, Is it not just divinity that there are gods, but no God? He that hath an ear, let him hear. Thus talked Zarathustra in the city he loved, which is surnamed the Pied Cow. Far from here, he had but 2 days to travel to reach once more his cave and his animals. His soul, however, rejoiced unceasingly on account of the nighness of his return home. Because it shall soon be nigh. He's rejoicing that soon it is happening. I will soon be home. The nighness. Always pondered that phrase. That there will be no gods but the one God. Well, is that not saying that there are other gods? All the gods then laughed. Is it not just divinity that there are gods, but no God? But I guess that's the statement that got rid of the other gods. I suppose they're talking about the Greek gods. Don't know. Don't know what he's saying there. I sometimes wish he would just speak plainly. 53. The return home. Take a quick break. Oh, lonesomeness, my home, lonesomeness. Too long have I lived wildly in the wild remoteness, to return to thee without tears. Now threaten me with the finger as mothers threaten, Now smile upon me as mothers smile. Now say just, who was it that like a whirlwind once rushed away from me? Who, when departing, called out, too long have I sat with lonesomeness, there have I unlearned silence. That hast thou learned now, surely. O Zarathustra, everything do I know, and that thou wert more forsaken amongst the many, thou unique one, than thou ever wert with me. One thing is forsakenness, another matter is lonesomeness. That hast thou now learned, and that amongst men thou wilt ever be wild and strange, even when they love thee, for above all they want to be treated indulgently. Here, however, art thou at home and house with thyself. Here canst thou utter everything and unbosom all motives. Nothing is here ashamed of congealed feelings. Here do all things come caressingly to thy talk and flatter thee, for they want to ride upon thy back. On every simile dost thou here ride to every truth. Uprightly and openly mayest thou here talk to all things, and verily it soundeth as praise in their ears for one to talk to all things directly. Another matter, however, is forsakenness. For dost thou remember, O Zarathustra, when thy bird screamed overhead, when thou stoodest in the forest, irresolute, ignorant, where to go, beside a corpse? When thou spakest, let mine animals lead me. More dangerous have I found it among men than among animals. That was forsakenness. And dost thou remember, O Zarathustra, when thou sattest in thine isle, a well of wine, giving and granting amongst empty buckets, bestowing and distributing amongst thirsty, until at last thou alone sattest thirsty among the drunken ones, and wailedst nightly, is taking not more blessed than giving, and stealing yet more blessed than taking. That was forsakenness. And dost thou remember, Zarathustra, when thy stillest hour came and drove thee forth from thyself, when with wicked whispering it said, speak and succumb, when it disgusted thee with all thy waiting in silence, and discouraged thy humble courage? That was forsakenness. O lonesomeness, my home, lonesomeness, how blessedly and tenderly speaketh thy voice unto me. We do not question each other. We do not complain to each other. We go together openly through open doors. For all is open with thee and clear, and even the hours run here on lighter feet. For in the dark, time weigheth heavier upon one than in the light. Here fly open unto me all beings' words and word cabinets. Here all being wanteth to become words. Here all becometh wanteth to learn of me how to talk. Down there, however, all talking is in vain. There, forgetting and passing by are the best wisdom that I have learned now. He who would understand everything in man must handle everything. But for that, I have 2 clean hands. I do not like even to inhale their breath. Alas, that I have lived so long among their noise and bad breaths. O blessed stillness around me, O pure odors around me, how from a deep breast this stilleth fetcheth pure breath, how it hearkeneth this blessed stillness. Down there speaketh everything, there is everything misheard. If one announce one's wisdom with bells, the shopmen in the marketplace will outjingle it with pennies. Everything among them talketh, no one knoweth any longer how to understand. Everything falleth into the water. Nothing falleth any longer into deep wells. Everything among them talketh. Nothing succeedeth any longer and accomplish itself. Everything cackleth, but who will sit quietly on the nest and hatch eggs? Everything among them talketh, everything is out-talked, and that which yesterday was still too hard for time itself and its tooth hangeth today, out-champed and out-chewed from the mouths of the men of today. Everything among them talketh, everything is betrayed, and what was once called the secret and secrecy of profound souls belongeth today to the street's trumpeters and other butterflies. O human hubbub, thou wonderful thing, thou noise in dark streets, now art thou again behind me. My greatest danger lieth behind me. And indulging and pitying lay ever my greatest danger, and all human hubbub wisheth to be indulged and tolerated. With suppressed truths, with fool's hand and befooled heart, and rich in petty lies of pity, thus have I ever lived among men. Disguided did I sit amongst them, ready to misjudge myself, that I might endure them, and willingly saying to myself, Thou fool, thou dost not know men. One unlearneth men when one liveth amongst them. There is too much foreground in all men. What can far-seeing, far-longing eyes do there? And, fool that I was, when they misjudged me, I indulged them on that account more than myself, being habitually hard on myself, and often even taking revenge on myself for the indulgence. Stung all over by poisonous flies, and hollowed like the stone of many drops of wickedness, thus did I sit amongst them, and still said to myself, Innocent is everything petty in its pettiness. Especially did I find those who call themselves the good, the most poisonous flies. They sting in all innocence, could lie in all innocence. How could they be just towards me? He who liveth amongst the good, pity teacheth them to lie. Pity maketh stifling air for all free souls, for the stupidity of the good is unfathomable. To conceal myself and my riches, that did I learn down there. For everyone did I still find poor in spirit. It was the lie of my pity that I knew in everyone, that I saw dissented in everyone, which was enough of spirit for him, and what was too much. Their stiff, wise men, I call them wise, not stiff, did I learn to slur over words. The grave diggers dig for themselves diseases under old rubbish, rest bad vapors. One should not stir up the marsh. One should live on mountains. With blessed nostrils do I again breathe mountain freedom. Freed at last is my nose from the smell of all human hubbub. With sharp breezes tickled, as with sparkling wine, sneezeth my soul, sneezeth and shouteth self-congratulatingly, health to thee. Thus spake Zarathustra. This guy, he's such a weird character. Like, he can't just enjoy his mountain. He has to cast so much darkness upon the things he hates in order for him to enjoy the things he enjoys. It's almost like he needs that sorrow or that hatred to give him, or to justify, the things he enjoys and he should be happy about. I don't think it's necessary. Can't you just be happy with what's there? I suppose, though, you should appreciate what you have, right? But in appreciating it, should you go over the top and write out like long verbose rhyme about the things you hate? I think sometimes he's focusing too much on the negative things. And what's all just being said is that he's on his way home, like that last 4 chapters or 3 chapters, whatever it was. It was just the going-ons about how happy he is to return home, where he finally feels free of all the things that are around him, things that disgust him. And on his journey, how he overheard these 2 guards talking to each other about godlessness, and how he himself was just pondering about godless, like the one God got rid of all other gods before it. Like, it is godlessness. Well, those are his words. And now that he's above it all, up on his mountain. Kind of like, isn't that what they considered the Greek gods to be, up on the mountains? Maybe that's where Zarathustra considers himself, why he casts himself up in the mountains. It's weird. This is philosophy? Like, I think a lot of people feel this way. And they just want to be free somewhere else. I don't think you need to be wise to understand that. Let's give the Shade something to read. He's been doing well with Monte Cristo. It's interesting that this one ends on a blank page. How many more is there left? 4, 5, 6. Wow. Just a few. The Shades book, Monte Cristo. I call them the Shades books, and the books that we're reading have made a distinction. But he's also reached chapter 50. That's where we began. I think the Shade is going to surpass us. Well, he's going to be spending something like the next 23, 24 days reading this book. So, yeah, naturally he will surpass us. That's fine. I do realize, though, that at this rate, I don't think we're going to be able to even begin the 4th book of Zarathustra. Well, that's something we'll figure out later. Enjoy your book, Shade.